House votes yes on draft bill. Trump threatens China. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ainsley Insights, brought to you by Ainsley Bullion, Ainsley Crypto, and the Gold and Silver Standard as the Ainsley Group celebrates 50 years. Today, we welcome back Sam, who's been taking another deep dive into the US political backdrop and some interesting and somewhat concerning developments that warrant a closer look. How are you going today, Sam?
Good, Chris. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you. Now, this time last week, we were discussing Germany and they were talking about bringing back that military conscription and all the consequences around that we were discussing. Now it appears the US is pushing to do the same thing. Is this a sign that the US is also agreeing with Germany there, that the Russia-Ukraine war could spill over into more countries? Is that how you interpret this?
I think it does mean that they're agreeing because just pushing draft bills out of nowhere at the same time as Germany, who's looking at Ukraine, is a little bit weird. And then you have the significant U.S. involvement in that conflict and other conflicts as well. So it could be Ukraine, Russia, it could be Israel, it could be looking at something kicking off with Taiwan, but I think it is related. And I also think it's a sign of how few people really want to join the military today. Of course, if you look back to a lot, far enough ago, if you look at Roman times, so all the men were either fighting or taking a break from fighting, and then it became a military draft when needed. And now it's, people are arguing about if a draft is a violation of their liberties. And there's been a pretty big backlash about this being voted yes in the House. If you think about it, though, you look at U.S. as military, you think of U.S. as at least I do, as a highly militarized country, a very big military from the United States. But North Korea's military is almost exactly the same size as the U.S. military. And the U.S. is about 13 times the size population wise as North Korea. So it is quite shocking that some small countries out there, I mean, you look at Iran's military is almost half the size of the US military. Again, population comes nowhere close to the USA. So it is also a sign of, if you're going to fight a war realistically, even against one country, there aren't nearly enough people to do it.
It's interesting hearing those numbers and you speaking about it in that way, because if you think in terms of the social media aspect of this, because I sometimes wonder about this, that people's perceptions have changed because we're just exposed more to this, particularly in the West. Do you think that that has something to do with what you were describing there, that the people simply don't want to join the military in these countries where you are exposed to more information about it? And I mean, the other side of that, which is part of my question as well, we talked about briefly about it last time. Is it a different type of war these days? Do you have different people that you need involved? Is it the same boots on the ground?
Well, yeah, I think you're right there. Especially in the comment, do we need the same type of people? We actually probably need a lot more skilled people who can deal with technology. There would be so many jobs in between, repairing IT systems and things like that. And unless the pay is a lot better or the conditions are a lot better,
Mm.
someone isn't going to give up their high paying IT job in, somewhere in California or somewhere on the beach in Florida to go work at some military base and not see their family for extended periods of time. I think there's that quality of life aspect as well. So they will probably need to attract some, some different types of people, not just infantry units. As the entire military used to basically just be infantry units.
Yeah, and it's just it is a very different landscape. I mean, I don't want to dwell on the war aspect. I was speaking to my dad about this on the weekend, and he didn't like your presentation last week because he goes, "It's too scary. This thought that we could already be in World War III." But it's something we certainly need to be paying attention to. You also covered in the article, however, about China preparing for a Trump victory. So related but not related. Do you think we've got an issue brewing there in terms of the US-China relations if Trump is re-elected? Because we see, I mean, you can't trust polls at this stage, but we see polls all over the place with all sorts of different outcomes, a number predicting that Trump is looking likely. I've seen numbers as high, sort of pushing up into the high 60% range. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it is related because this would definitely start a trade war. And, a trade war could be, look, it could stay like that. I mean, the Cold War kind of stayed a Cold War. Well, of course, until now. But a trade war with China could be just as devastating. I mean, you could see people losing their industries, losing their jobs. You could see, as Trump stated, he's willing to put in additional. That's not standalone. It's an additional 60% tariffs on any goods imported from China. So what that would do is put a tremendous amount of pressure on American businesses to rebuild their supply chains from places like India, Thailand, Vietnam, all these other countries, just to hedge against, you know, these tariffs, which could make it almost impossible to make a profit for these businesses. Other people say that what Biden has done, which is surgically target the tech industries in China, like limit semiconductors and other high-tech equipment from being imported into China, has done even more damage. So I can't really say which is more important. Biden also decided to keep Trump's original tariffs as well. So they were kind of expecting him to reverse everything, but he actually kept those and added on more. So it could even be a non-Trump issue. It looks like US politicians are willing to pile more and more on China, and Trump's just perhaps more vocal about it. But 60% would be dramatic. It would unwind all the Chinese government's work in trying to prop up the stock market and the property markets.
And there has to be unintended consequences or unforeseen consequences of moves of that magnitude because they are massive. I mean, I even saw, and I don't know how accurate this was, but talk, and it might have been from Trump, but talk of potentially not needing income tax even. You could do it all through these ridiculously high tariffs on all countries. So, that's possibly not realistic, but it opens your mind to where these things can go when policies like this become entrenched. Because if you open that up really to being much broader, it shuts down global trade significantly across the board, you would think.
Yeah, it would be an incredibly painful process, and it would be kind of alienating in a way. I think the initial majority of the punishment would actually be on the American businesses trying to import. So it would put pretty much all of the ownership on them to have to work around and find somewhere else to get their products. Or else it would be they could do the same thing and just raise prices, and then the pressure would be on the American consumer. So it's not just a flip of a switch and say we're going to tariff you this much and that's going to fix everything. It is going to stop products from coming in, albeit a lot of them are smaller products, things like anything from the phone cases to office supplies and all these little things. It's not like we're getting semiconductors or Boeings coming in, but it would be extremely damaging to a huge range of small businesses and even large businesses that provide all the basic goods we use every day.
And I know we've talked about this before as well, but once you start doing something like that and businesses do adapt, what we need to remember is that often you can't undo that process, because once the adaptations have been made, it can have very long-lasting consequences. And we saw that here with when the Australia attempted some of that with China, and then the bounce back just hasn't been there, whether it was wine or lobsters or whatever it was at the time. We didn't bounce back to that level. So it can have long standing consequences when you adopt policies like this, particularly if you're just experimenting. It can be a very costly experiment. But to wrap all this up, let's bring it back to gold. You obviously have been watching that very closely. We've seen gold push up to those highs. It's sort of sitting back a little bit from those highs now. Do you think there's potential with some of this news to really be the impetus that pushes gold through those highs and beyond?
Yeah, I think it is. And there are, analysts out there who are saying they think gold is quite high, and, they're looking for gold retracements. Now, those, gold retracements do happen. That's normal. Anything that goes up typically has retracements downward. And look, I can't say or guarantee that gold will go to any level, But what I can do is just say historically, gold went from $250 an ounce roughly in 1999 all the way up to about $1,920 in 2011. So that roughly 12 years, gold went up about 8 times. So if that same thing happens, if we have even another, because, people talk about hockey stick inflation, it goes and goes and goes, and then it gets
Yep.
aggressive and goes more and more vertical. Even if we say we don't have this hockey stick inflation, it just keeps going as it is. That would mean that in another 12 years, we could see gold at about 17,700 per troy ounce, US dollars. So it's not particularly absurd to see gold going that much higher, because as we always talk about, we're just seeing a currency go lower. And with the petrodollar looking like it's coming to an end, and the war drums beating, it looks like money printing may be back on the table. So of course we can't guarantee gold goes up today, tomorrow, or even the next 10 years. No one can guarantee, but just looking back at history, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for that to happen.
So maybe there's that little spark of hope there amongst all the war stories that'll keep Dad happy anyway. So thank you for your work on that today, Sam, and that broad range of conversation. I think there's lots of really interesting things happening at the moment, even if they're a little bit scary. So thanks for your work on that, and we look forward to continuing to follow where that leads. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks everyone for watching. We'll chat again soon.